Awesome. Well, welcome everyone to another episode of the Health Made Simple show. I'm here with our host, Dr. Bart Precourt, who has been a healthcare practitioner for over 20 years, practicing a range of modalities, including chiropractic, kinesiology, acupuncture, functional nutrition and supplementation, and lab testing, all out of his clinic, Balance Health Studio in Seagrove Beach, Florida, as well as virtually all over the world. So he's also the founder of the Health Edge program, which is a cutting-edge health program for entrepreneurs and executives wanting to take their health to the next level. So he's also worked with celebrities and athletes all around the world, and now has a farm as well that we've been chatting about. And we're going to kick off with a clinical insight for the week.
Yeah, so the clinical insight this week, it's really a tale of two stories where I had two young females in today, and they're both in their early 50s, and yet entirely different perspectives. So one of the girls that was in literally said these words, "I hate getting old," and then filled in the blank with pain. Literally, it was kind of a conversation of there was pains going on, there was weight gain going on, and just body changes. So just put that aside. That's one girl. I think she was 51 or 52 years old. The other one, 54 years old, polar opposite, literally thriving, not complaining about age, really in the what else can I do category, looking for opportunities and practicing health, not everything working out perfect, yet recognizing the ups and downs. And this particular day today wasn't one of her best days, but still the mindset of it was, what else can I do? Like literally saying, "Hey, Dr. Bart, yeah, I'm doing all those things. And what else?" Literally saying, "Dr. Bart, what else you got for me?" You know, and I'm scratching my head thinking, I don't know. I think throwing it all at you. Like you're doing it. You're doing it. And the truth is, as we all know, well, I don't know if everyone knows, but sometimes you're doing all the right things.
Yeah.
Actually, I know people don't know this, and this needs to be heard. Sometimes you can be doing all of the right things. You're eating right. You're fasting. You're getting the sugar out. You're non-gluten. You're going to bed on time. You're doing all these different things, and yet it's still not perfect. You still end up having a day that maybe you have pain, or maybe you have a digestive issue. And there's, and part of the reasons for those, Karen, there's so many things that affect us as human beings. And to the age part of one of the ladies, it's not age. And this is one of the questions that we're going to answer tonight about the aging process. It's not about age, it's about how we age and what do we do with the age. Do things compound as we age? They sure do. And if there's one thing about the aging process, and we'll dive into this a little bit deeper later, is that if you find yourself here, well, this way I should say it, you need to make sure that you do more this year than you did last year. And next year, you got to do more next year than you're doing this year. And that never stops. That's the ongoing process. Surrender to the fact that you're willing and worthy of all the efforts that it takes. Because the truth is, if you're like me, I didn't really get on my health edge until I was in my, I've been practicing chiropractic since, like, say, around 30 years old. Again, I really didn't get on my health edge of really pulling in the different components, you know, physically, mentally, spiritually, biochemical, all those different things, probably until my mid 40s. No, that's not right. About early 40. So I had 4 decades of practicing ill health. And I don't think I'm any different than most people in the country where that's a truth, right? Most people practicing ill health, it's not even like practicing health, it's practicing ill health, literally doing the wrong things for human beings. So the clinical insight today is so much of it is perspective, and, you know, give yourself a little bit of a break, but also own it. And when you own your health, the goods and the bads, that's a great place to be in. So own, if you're feeling really good, own it. If you're not feeling really good, own it. And therefore you can do something about it. If there's this obligatory, it's based on age, you got, then what is the age? Like what number all of a sudden makes you feel old and not feel so good? And if that is the case, if it is age and someone ever tells you, your doctor tells you, oh, this is age, you're getting old, that's why you have arthritis, fire them. Fire her, whatever, like, because it's not a good answer. And it's also a kind of a defeatist attitude of saying there's nothing you can do about it. Yeah. So I think that's the clinical insight of different perspectives, and we can do something about it. And the big part of that is own it.
Yeah, I love that. Whenever I've read the research from the blue zones, the blue zones around the world are areas where they're small populations where most of the people within that population live to over 100 in good health. That's like a blue zone. So there's a couple around the world, and one of they pulled 9 things out of the blue zones that were the same in every blue zone. And one of them was your perception of aging. That was literally one of the 9 that was common in all that was a thing. There were 9 things that you could do to get yourself, further towards the same as the blue zone participants or people. And yeah, one of them was literally one of the top 9 was your perception of aging.
So what was the perception that they had of their age?
Well, because everybody who was around them lived to live to 100 in good health, as in riding their bike, fixing fences, doing things well into their 90s. Their perception was that is how you age. So they had this perception of aging that was healthy. They didn't think, oh, hey, I'm over 60, so of course I'm on medication. They thought, that would be strange for an 80-year-old to be on medication. They're like, oh, what's wrong with you? You're 85 and you're on a medication. What are you doing wrong? Whereas we're like, oh, you're over, or you're over 50. Of course you're on medication, right? Tends to be our perception sometimes, or out in the general public. Often people are, think that of course you're going to get on medication as you get older.
Yeah. So that's wonderful to hear that, because that perception goes for many things in life. And I think as we're able to kind of take stock in it all, they would take stock when you said that, you look around, if you're all 85 years old, you just expect you're still working, you're still out fixing the fence.
Yeah.
We don't have that perception.
No.
We're dialing it in for old age homes and stuff like that. It's a little bit different perception. So I love it. It's yeah. All right. Sweet.
Awesome. All right. So we've got some questions that have been sent in. Shall we get started with them?
Let's dive right in.
All right. Number 1, is meat the best go-to when eating out?
Okay. Well, let's, if not necessarily, and then it could be. So I'm going to answer 2 ways. So just a little reminder, when it comes to meat, and I'm certainly an advocate, and I think sometimes, and I know this because I just showed up in the office the other day, sometimes maybe think I'm an advocate of let's eat meat more often. And that's not really what I'm saying. I really want to open up the dinner table or our plates to being available to having meat on it again, because it really gets crucified. And Karen, we're going to see a lot more crucification of meat, specifically beef, over the next couple of years, with all the talk about climate change, et cetera. And we can speak to that briefly if we need to. So going out, when you go out to eat, so I'm going to put this in a couple different perspectives. One, if it's not grass-fed organic beef, it is really, really bad for us. It is one of the worst things you can put in your body. Cows that are raised commercially are not the same animal as a grass-fed organic cow. They're literally 2 different entities, the way that their chemistry makeup is. They're one's super inflamed, one's leaner meat. Karen, there's some fascinating, this is what's so fascinating. I have randomly said on our show multiple times before that I could argue that grass-fed beef has a nutrient profile that's as good or better than kale. I've said that several times here. Well, lo and behold, a study just came out. And again, I don't know if it's not out of Australia, that they've discovered that red beef, grass-fed organic red beef, has phytonutrients.
Wow.
Phytonutrients mean,
which we usually find in green vegetables or plants.
Yes, coming from beef. It makes some logical sense, because that's what cows eat.
They're eating.
And then you convert it. I didn't bank my comments on that in the past based on the new research showing out and research and the science showing up. So I think we're going to discover more of that. My concern is that the political push that's coming, that's already started, that we're going to see in these next couple of years, are going to really, really crucify meat in perspective to climate change. And that's already been debunked. It's not true. Literally, grass-fed cows protect and enhance the environment. The whole idea of water usage is just nonsense, like overwater use, all the things that they make the casual observer go, oh yes, like yes, beef is bad, and it's not. Bad beef is bad.
It's bad, yeah, right? Like some of those things might be true of the traditional beef industry. We just need to switch it over to be able to get
correct. And it is very, yes, and it's very, very sustainable. And there's so much data and research out there, and there's so many good, there's a lot of good podcasts and information out there. The reality is, though, it is sustainable. It is good for human beings. We couldn't survive on all beef. We couldn't survive on all vegetables.
Yeah.
Our environment couldn't handle either one of those. So we're going to need a combination moving forward. And I think when it comes to me talking about the beef and meat and chicken, egg, and fish, is that I just want to make people clear that I do not think a go-to would be like, because this happens. So I'm going to mention it, but I've no an ill will against. So there's a burger place called Five Guys.
Okay.
Yeah, and I guess Five Guys made this burger joint. And like, it's a cool environment. I've been there, and they, they got all these French fries and all this cool. You can get like these triple and quadruple stacked burgers and all this stuff. And I had a client say, well, listen, I know you're a big advocate of meat. So instead of going out for pizza, I went to Five Guys. And listen, no, that's still not good. In fact, that's still bad for your health. You left there more inflamed. It increased what's called mTOR. So there's so many things that on the biochemistry for human beings. Bad beef is very, very bad for us. Combine that with some French fries and some gluten bread and stuff like that, you're really headed down the wrong road. So, this morning on my live Facebook, I often do a live Facebook, and that was a conversation, or kind of my simple health tip this morning was, is it ever a good idea to skip a meal? And the answer is yes, but never mind for intermittent fasting reasons. Well, when someone says to me, Karen, they say, well, I had to eat something. I was starving.
There's no good options on the menu. What do I choose?
Good options. What do? You skip a meal.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds like, but we have to step back. Hopefully you're healthy enough. You can just say, pass. I'm going to get food in 3 more hours. I'm going to get food on my ride home, or whatever it may be. I'll get food in the morning. Yeah. Hopefully you're healthy enough to be able to make that decision. It's kind of like this. Would you ever be like, man, next gas station's 30 miles away. You technically have plenty in the tank, but it's just convenient to eat now or to fill it up now. You wouldn't pull over to like the local, pond and just start siphoning water out of the pond just because, it's time to fuel up your tank. You wouldn't do that because that's not what goes in a car. And just like the human body, there's no justifiable reason. I just had to eat. In the event that you have to have that happen, and because you're going to have a blood sugar crash, know that was just an area of your health that you probably need to, or you could make some improvements with blood sugar, that you should be able to kind of work right through those. So, and we've all been there. And then of course the other one just make sure you prepare better. So is there a best go-to when eating out? And the answer is whichever is closest to God's garden is the best go-to. Now, most likely it's not going to be your meats.
Yeah, because a lot of restaurants don't have organic grass-fed meat. I mean, more are, I think.
More are, and because you go to them, you go to a place like Prima Organic Cafe, right? So nice little plug there. You go to a place that that their emphasis is for clean, organic, fresh foods. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons that you're in that establishment. And the beauty is now we are seeing more and more. So the public wants it. The public's getting it. So we see it in the grocery stores, et cetera. So if there was a go-to, it's going to be whatever's closest to God's garden. Of course, 1 ingredient food, ideally organic. And bad meat is one of the bad things for us. So that would be the one I would say pass on, not as a go-to.
Yeah. Okay. So it's a good go-to if we can get it high quality. If we can't, though, it's worse than maybe low quality other things. Low quality vegetables. Yes, yeah. It'd be better to get the vegetarian meal better to skip. If we are eating something, better to go with the veggie option than the bad meat option.
Yes. And I would say yes to that.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Cool. All right. Next question here. Okay. I know you are a holistic doctor, yet of all the pain meds out there, which don't you recommend, or which do you recommend maybe?
Okay, so pain, that's always an interesting topic.
Yeah.
So listen, I agree 100%. Pain is not fun. Pain sucks. And it can often make us do some pretty odd things. So let me address this kind of like almost from a textbook perspective, and then I'll roll it back a little bit. So here's the textbook part of it. The pain medications by themselves are usually really not good for us. Unfortunately, here in our country, even though it's getting better, the number one pain medication are what we call the opioid group.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's super bad stuff, Karen. Fortunately, those companies and those doctors who literally plotted and figured out ways that, even knowing the manufacturers of these opioid companies knew that these drugs were highly addictive. Yes, they knew they were highly addictive. They, in coercion with doctors out there, had an entire plan, a playbook on how to get it out in the public and get people addicted on these opioids. Insane. And so how can I speak so freely about that? Because they're all getting their asses handed to them now in court, which is really, really cool. So literally they're dropping like flies. It is the biggest payout in the history of our country.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing. Unfortunately,
I mean, it ruins people's lives, right?
Yeah. I just happen to know some of the people that are firsthand involved in it. Literally some of the lawyers that are firsthand involved with it. You should see this stuff on every night news. You don't, because these friendly little drug companies or drug stores down the road were in on it, literally in on it, Karen. And they're going like they're losing in court. So anyways, pain medication, we got to be careful of the opioids. And when you have surgeries and when you have broken bones, those are what they go to. So we got to be, very, very careful with those. Now, here's the other textbook part of it is pain is there for a reason. Pain is part of, you can almost throw it in the category of an immune response, meaning that your body's going to have a response to something that's taking place. And as a response of having pain, say you've damaged something, you have a bruise, you've torn a ligament, you've strained a muscle, you've broken a bone, that pain signal is signaling your brain. And the signal that it says that we have damaged tissue, organ, gland, whatever it may be. And in that moment, the brain being as intelligent, this is how brilliant our bodies are. Like there's such an innate wisdom. It makes us the rest of all our philosophies and strategies look silly, literally. So the body's so amazing. We have these damages. It gives us pain, stops us in a moment. We have to pay attention. If it hurts to move your finger, it gives you a lot of pain. So you stop moving your finger. I know that sounds silly, but that's what's supposed to happen. I work in the pain field. And so every time I go to clinic, every time I show up in my office, at least once a day, someone will say, Doc, every time I do this, it hurts. And I say, then stop doing that.
Yes.
It happens. I've been doing this for 25 years and it happens every time I go to work.
Yeah.
So there's a wisdom within the body that says, hey, listen, if you just stay still for a moment,
it doesn't hurt.
It doesn't hurt as much. Maybe you got an open wound and you still feel the pain, etc.
Yeah.
Being able to feel some pain is critical in the healing process. So I'll give you now like a reference to it or an analogy that I think is important. So pain is like the alarm system. And if the alarm system's going off, like full blown alarm, like a fire alarm, the fire alarm goes off because there's a problem, right? Yeah. There's a massive problem, massive. And the house might burn down if you're not careful.
Yeah.
So it alarms everyone. It even sends a signal. They have these fire alarms now. They're connected to like the internet, and they send a signal to the fire company, right?
Yeah.
It's like you pull a fire alarm, and then they send a fire truck. So imagine for a moment that problem's going on, but you shut the alarm off, and the fire truck never comes. And that literally is what happens. And that's one of the ways we develop chronic pain. We develop excessive amounts of scar tissue. That's how we repeat our injuries, or we create massive compensations. We have pain on one side, we use pain relievers, and then the body doesn't recognize it, and you overcompensate in another area. And because I've worked, literally hands-on for 25 years with the physical body, this is exactly what we see. So the conversation about pain is, listen, we have to have a little pain in order to be able to grow, in order to be able to heal. So I don't know. It's a long story of me saying, I don't know that I like many pain relievers out there. I understand fully why I use them. So this is usually what I'd say. If you have to use a pain reliever, use a pain reliever, go to bed.
Yeah.
That's decent. Like that's how I would kind of suggest, like, take it, go to bed, so you can't do any more harm.
Yeah.
Now, granted, you're still not going to get sent the nutrients that the brain would be sending to heal up a tendon, to help heal a bone, to heal a wound, to fix a burn. You're not going to get the same robust amount of nutrients. That's what inflammation's for, all of those good things that we try to avoid. Yet, at least you're not going to do any more harm if you just go to bed. Take your pain reliever, go to bed. Are there some natural ones that don't shut off the alarm system, yet help facilitate the pain? Sure, and we use some. There's a great one called Salagesic. That's what they mimicked. Salagesic comes from willow tree bark. That's what they mimic aspirin from. So there's a natural source of that doesn't downregulate or doesn't break down the stomach lining and thin out the vessels, thin out the capillaries in the body. And there's another one we use called Nervogesic for pain that has a little bit of California poppy seed in it. And so what's neat about a lot of them, they're also a little bit sedative. So again, they're going to slow you down
and help you go to sleep if you need to.
Yeah, exactly. So especially that Nervogesic, if you have nerve pain at night, Nervogesic is phenomenal. You just take it when you need it. It's good to have on like your healthy medicine cabinet. So if people want things for a little natural, more ways to do it, Nervogesic and Salagesic are my go-tos clinically. And then there's other things like CBD can often be effective. There's a lot of different things. Yet when compared, and this is important to understand as well, when compared to opioids, which are super, super addictive, they don't hold a candle when it comes to pain relief. They really don't.
Yeah.
So if that is what your measuring stick is, hey, you got anything, doc? You got anything like, this opioid, this Oxycontin? No, we don't. Like that's not the way that it works. Yet a good, healthy system can modulate and regulate pain pretty fast. Most pain is prolonged because we interfered with it.
Yeah.
That's so I don't know if I answered that properly yet. I don't necessarily recommend a particular pain drug because I'm not a medical doctor. I don't prescribe drugs. When it comes to herbs that help regulate the normal systems of the body, things like California poppy seed, things like there's a blend of it that has Jamaica dogwood in it, which is nice. It's called Nervogesic, and that really effective for nerve pain at night. And then Salagesic, what I spoke about, which is more like a really natural source of almost like an aspirin.
And what about headache pain? Is that different to other kind of body pain or back pain?
Yeah, so when you start to like break it down like that, there's so many things we can do to enhance the body's overall function to reduce pain. We always want to get to the root cause, and that's really what functional medicine, functional nutrition is all about. What is the root cause? So if you have a headache, it's not caused from a lack of aspirin, we know that, or a lack of belief. And I know it seems so like it's almost like funny to say it that way, but like that's what most people do to try to fix that problem. So oftentimes simple, like if it's a headache, and I think we've talked about it here in the show before, a lot of times the brain is becoming dehydrated and it's become a little inflamed because too much sugar. And that's part of the whole mechanism of a hangover, like too much alcohol, too much sugar, it dehydrates the brain. So essential fatty acids. So one of the things that here in my household we'll use is cod liver oil. We'll throw a couple capsules of that in the mouth, pop them in the mouth, and almost immediately you'll often get a little bit of relief, which is pretty cool. Hydration, huge. Just pain in general in the human body. Get hydrated again. Like that's a big one for people. And again, I have my hands on people so frequently that a lot of them will probably decrease doctor's visits if they just got better hydrated because they wouldn't be in as much pain as they are.
Yeah, people don't drink enough water at all. It's a lot of people forget to drink water.
Yes, big time. And then it's always, remember, it's competing too, because it's part of the process of helping you detox. And then so water is also competing with the coffee and with the Red Bull and just all the other things that might be in there as well.
Red Bull, yes. Okay, cool. All right, so that gives us some some suggestions for pain. Our next question is my doctor. Oh, this is kind of similar. Well, on the way, my doctor recommended an aspirin a day since COVID. Is this a good idea?
So for a while, I think that was a pretty common recommendation. Yeah. And that was
like different things. How about flying? I've heard before, hey, if you're going to go on a plane, make sure you take aspirin.
Yeah. So that's where it gets a little fishy, Karen. So when I heard them doing that with COVID, it was pretty interesting. So, and what we know now afterwards, both the vaccine and the actual virus made some people vulnerable to clotting.
Okay.
So, yeah. So when used in that situation, and I think that's why some doctors were recommending aspirin, because it doesn't really do anything for a virus. Yet it was really about the clotting. So ultimately what it does, it helps thin the blood.
Yeah.
You got to scratch our heads on that one though.
Yeah.
Right. So do you want thinner blood? Do you want your lipid permeability? Do you want the outer part of your cell to be thinner? And the reason I say it that way is because you can see people that take an aspirin a day coming from a mile away. How do we see it? We see the bruising. The bruising really from like mid forearm down, especially on top of the hands. And we see a lot of older people because it's just common that they might even be on a blood thinner, but it's just this classic thing. They say, well, aspirin a day for everyone past, 40 or 50 years old. And I've spoken to doctors. We've had a doctor here that was a big advocate of, and I just disagree. I disagree for a couple of reasons. One, because of what it does to the stomach lining, and because it essentially starts to break the stomach lining down. And if you take it every single day, and you're doing that for a year at a time, 2 years, 5 years, you are slowly but surely going to erode some of that stomach lining and inhibit some fundamental nutrients like vitamin C, zinc, and iron, and these things that are really important for the stability and the function of human life. So that is one reason where I'm not a huge fan of it for sustained reason. Now, listen, whoever's asking that question, if your doctor suggested that you go on it, have a conversation with your doctor. Yeah. I'm not taking you on or off even an aspirin here, yet we have to really sometimes look at it like, what is the side effect of taking an aspirin a day? Do you know more people are killed by aspirin a day than a lot of different things, like a lot. So wow. I think
that's a perspective in terms of thinking that things are harmless, right? Oh, whatever, it's only aspirin. So it doesn't, people don't think there's any side effects. Oh, it's only aspirin. Oh, it's only Tylenol. Oh, it's only this. Oh, it's only Nurofen or whatever, and I don't know, ibuprofen or whatever. People often think a lot of these type of medications they're harmless.
Yeah, that's a great point, Karen. So one of the things of long-term aspirin is that it creates stomach ulcers. And when I say that a lot of people die every year from it, they literally die from bleeding ulcers. That's what I mean. So they don't have an adverse reaction to one. That's not what I'm talking about. Yeah. It's literally the bleeding ulcers that happen over time. And that's a simple Google search. Like, I'm not making that up, or you can ask your doctor about it. And a lot of doctors, for some reason, just overlook it. And I understand it's been used millions and millions of times. Yeah, there's, I don't know if it's 10 or 20,000 people per year in our country that die from the use of aspirin. So that's pretty significant. Yeah. And I will tell you clinically, I see it every day. So this is what always goes through my brain when I see it. And what do I mean by seeing it? Like, usually in the back of the hands, you'll see all that bruising. You're like, what's going on there? I must be aged. No, not aged. Literally, we're taking aspirin a day, thinning the capillaries. So the question you got to ask, well, those are the ones I can see. What about all the other ones I can't see? On the inside of the body, the things that are helping me, store and house things like my mitochondria, like what's going on with those cells? Are those breaking down as well? And why do we see so much in the hands? And the reason we see them in the hands more so than other parts of the body, one, they're visible, but mostly is because they're in contact with a lot of stuff and they're farthest from the heart. So whatever's farthest from the heart is going to get the least amount of nutrients. And so like our extremities, like our hands and feet. So if you're inhibiting your body from absorbing nutrients by taking an aspirin a day because you're beating up your gut, you're literally breaking up your, the stomach, your upper GI system. And now you can't absorb as much zinc and you can't absorb as much vitamin C as you used to, or magnesium for that matter. And then literally it starts to break down the capillaries. You start to bruise easy. And bruising easy is not okay thing. And so what's really ironic about it all is that part of having heart attacks and strokes is the breaking down of these vessels and then leaking into other areas. And it's really ironic that what an aspirin does is thins blood. And I get that thins it out so we don't have clotting, but it creates a whole different situation. So again, I would, if someone had ever, or if you're on an aspirin a day, scratch that a little bit.
Yeah.
Do a little research, gain some different perspective of, why am I on this in the first place? Is it just because my doctor recommended? Most people, when I ask, and I used to ask all the time. I said, why are you on aspirin a day? You know what the answer is?
My doctor told me to.
That's it. That's number one. That's
Isn't that
two.
for all things? My doctor told me to. My doctor told me to. I guess so many medications or things, when you ask people why, they just got told to. They didn't ask questions. It's why doctors don't really like me. I haven't had many doctors that like me much at all, because I'm always like, why? What's that one? What is the thing? What is that different? What are you doing? What does that do? What are the side effects? What, if there's a surgery, they go through those side effects. I'm like, well, how many times of each one of these has happened to you specifically, right? I've had surgeons be kind of honest and be like, okay, this one actually happened. Give me the rundown of what happened. But otherwise I don't know.
Yeah. So I guess, I look at that two ways. And I guess we should be able to trust our doctors, right?
That's
true. And just take it for what it is. I also, as a healthcare provider, I love when someone says to me, well, how does ashwagandha work?
Yeah.
I think it gives me an opportunity to geek out. You know what I mean? Wow, affects your gland here, and that regulates the hormones. And I love that opportunity to educate the individual, because then it's empowerment. And then someone might say, well, what are the side effects that take place with this? So maybe I give you, some adrenal support. So, well, if your adrenals are stronger than we think, this might rev you up like a cup of coffee, and that would be so. But being realistic, that everything you take can have a side effect. Doesn't mean that it's a deadly one. It just means that it could have something other than what's planned, impact. So, the aspirin a day since COVID, is that a smart idea? Again, I'm not going to tell you to come on or off yet. I will highly recommend, unless we see it all the time in our clinic, because, we have a yoga studio as well. And it's fascinating to me how many people are not asking the question, and they have bruising, and they say, well, they'll literally say, this is from my aspirin, and not think about anything else. What about the other capillaries in your body? What about the other tissues? Are they breaking down that easy as well? So if nothing else, maybe people just kind of, again, have a little perspective about, just because someone said for me to take this doesn't mean that I should take it, or maybe I should ask some questions, and maybe after you ask those questions, it is a good idea. And
then what about, if someone's been recommended for COVID reasons, is there anything else they should be taking instead?
So literally, Karen, in 2 weeks from today, I'm going down to Orlando, and I'm teaching an 8-hour course on long hauler syndrome, which is post-COVID.
Yeah. Which is amazing, because it's one of the things that I think where people are, scared of and dealing with, and doctors aren't really talking about.
Well, I'll be talking about 8 hours to a bunch of other doctors. And so here, I'll give you a kind of the short, Cliff Note version of what I'm going to talk about. I'm definitely going to talk about the specifics that people have concerns about, whether it be clotting, whether it be hair loss and weight gain, a lot of weight gain post-COVID. And the truth is, there is not one answer. And so I'm turning my 8-hour conversation of this post-COVID long hauler syndrome into how to become a superhuman. And ultimately, that's what it is. If you have long-term, any, effects that have taken place as a result of having COVID or the vaccine, whatever it may be, everything we talk about on this show applies. There is not one simple thing that's because blank. It doesn't work that way. And every individual is a little bit different. Yet the foundations of health are solid for all of us. And the truth is, we were super unprepared as a world to be faced with a highly spreadable virus. That's it in a nutshell. Unprepared meaning that our nervous systems were weak, our immune systems were weaker, our mindsets were weaker. We literally got scared in a hole and believed that staying in that hole was a good idea. and it was not. And we learned a lot from it. So hopefully we did. So I think, and if anyone is in the Orlando area and they want to join and listen to me talk for 8 hours, they're welcome to do so. There'll be a room full of great practitioners and there'll be practitioners that listen to this. So, functional medicine, acupuncturists, all different types of doctors. And it's great. I love these opportunities. And there's a part of me that, it's interesting. So I love these opportunities to speak. And there's a part of me that always wants to shake some of the doctors and say, listen, the best opportunity that we all have to impact others is by leading by example.
Yes.
Yeah. And Karen, I know you work with a lot of doctors all around the world.
I work with a lot of doctors. Yes.
And I'm sure there's times for you feel the same way. Like the best message is leading by example. And that does not mean that you have to be perfectly healthy.
No.
Right? It just means be in the process. And
well, you don't have to be perfect, but you have to be practicing health or practicing the things that you're talking about.
Practice health. Because like I said, so I think I was relatively fortunate. 30 years, 40 years later, after practicing ill health, I still had enough health left to, right? Because that's not.
But I do see some that I know what you're talking about.
And sometimes, like when I give these, when I do these, especially these all day, educational type, I don't even call it workshop, right? It's an all day seminar. When I do these, I really end up speaking to the people in the room more so, even though I'm teaching them to teach their patients. It really becomes about the people in that room. And again, that'll be my prayer going into it, that it just all flows gentle and easy. And somehow I walk out of there influencing those doctors so they can go impact the lives in their communities. Yet if anyone happens to be in Orlando and want to hear me talk for 8 hours on everything I know about becoming superhuman, that's what we're doing on Saturday, the 23rd, I believe it is.
Okay, I love it. We'll have to do a show after that as well for those that can't make it to Orlando to get the summary.
Yes, we'll do that. We'll do the short version of it.
Okay, awesome. All right, love that. Well, my next question here is, my husband recently was diagnosed with shingles. What can we do to help? Is there anything we can do to help?
Yeah, so shingles is a virus. It's very similar to having the chickenpox, but it's not the chickenpox virus. And if you had chickenpox, yes, you can get this virus in what they call shingles. So real quickly about shingles. So usually the way that we know we have shingles, that it shows up in very specific dermatome patterns. That means skin patterns. So it follows the nerve. So what this tells us is that, and often it'll be around like the flanks or on your sides, but it could be on your face, could be on the head, but it follows a very specific dermatome. So if you're ever curious what they are, you can Google dermatome levels and you'll see, T10 or T9, and they have these very specific patterns around your body. By knowing that also tells us it's very connected to the nervous system, which means that when you stress out the nervous system, that is when shingles shows up. So what do we do? If you asked me this 15 years ago, when I wasn't really involved in doing a lot of nutritional therapies and functional nutrition, I would have said, get adjusted. No doubt about it, Karen, it's still a viable treatment for it, where literally helping your nervous system get pressure off of the actual nerves itself is very, very effective in helping things, calm back down. Shingles is usually has two primary causes, and they kind of tie them together. One is stress, two is your immune system. Usually the stress breaks down your immune system. So if you're immunocompromised, then yes, that's where you need to put your emphasis. If it's stress, then you got to also consider, how do you sleep a little better? How do you and that's where adjustments were phenomenal. Acupuncture works really good here. When it comes to supplementation, there are some very specific things here. We use something called Viranon, which is, it's antiviral. It helps us with all viruses. Use a little bit of St. John's wort, phenomenal. And that's part immune function. That's part of downregulating the virus. The shingles virus falls in the family of the herpes complex. So just kind of, and then there's all kinds of them. There's a bunch of different ones, herpes 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever. But it's virus, and it is a bit contagious. Although I've never gotten it, and I've adjusted, I don't know, 100 plus people that have had it. So I don't know. And I don't really see it. And I think it's considered contagious. I should probably double check on that. I think it's considered contagious. yet I've never seen it contagious.
I heard that you had to be in contact with the sores, like only if there's sores and blisters. And then if you were in contact with those, you could catch it, but otherwise you couldn't from like breathing or like you couldn't in the way that you can the flu or
yeah, I probably should have clarified that too. One of those significant like identifications is a blister pattern.
Yeah.
Blisters, these little, like they're pus filled and stuff like that. So here's what I typically do for them. This is going to sound odd, but this is very, very effective. And this is exactly what we need when it comes to treating things like shingles. We're going to increase the amount of calcium getting out to that tissue. Yeah. So we use something called calcium lactate. It's a super ionizable type, meaning very absorbable type of calcium. And then we use something called Cataplex F, which is really vitamin F. Vitamin F is what takes the calcium out of the bloodstream and pushes it in the tissue. And that's really important. So we got to get that calcium out there, and that becomes a facilitator. So we do those, and then we support. If we know that it's stress related, maybe you want a little bit of adrenal support. Oftentimes, and it's my suggestion, you get yourself adjusted, do this, get those two things, calcium lactate, vitamin F. We could go back to what we talked about, pain modulation, because some shingles are super painful, super, super painful. But what I find, even though people say you can't get it more than once, you can. And I see the same people getting it over and over again. A lot of their patterns remain the same. So a little taking better care of yourself, watching stress, especially prolonged chronic stress. That's usually what it is. Get yourself adjusted, get some acupuncture, chill out a little bit, get some more sleep, you're good to go.
Yes. Probably help a lot of things. Those remedies, right? Like chill out a bit, get a bit more sleep, like, calm the nervous system.
At least we're consistent here. Yeah.
Totally. All right, next question we've got here is, this is kind of like what we were talking about. Is age really a reason we start to feel bad?
No, if I just put this simply, it's not about age. It's really about how we're aging. So let me be specific about this, because we did talk about this a little bit. So what happens with the aging process is this, Karen. We clog up our detox pathways. So this is aging in a nutshell. We clog up our detox pathways. That's where the aging process starts. When we do that, simultaneously, we create nutritional deficiencies. We create deficiencies in the vitamins, minerals, and nutrients, micro and macronutrients that we need to make new cells. So if you clog up the pathways and you can't get rid of toxins, and you've taken on a lot of toxins, and you create deficiencies in the very things that make new cells, that's aging. And that's when the mitochondria break down and you get older. So how to reverse aging? Clean up the detox pathways, restore the nutritional deficiencies. And then all the other things you can do, all the other different biohacks. But that, in a nutshell, is the aging process. You want to get younger, get cleaner. That's it.
Yeah. And you kind of like what we were talking about before. I mean, you get some people that are in like much better health in their 50s than somebody else in their 30s, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And some of it really, and it's not like a blame game either. Listen, I grew up in an environment where a lot of the parents smoked.
Yes.
Right. So like, it was just a thing. Right. So like, and I'm making an assumption. I think less parents smoke nowadays. I could be wrong.
I think it's less fashionable to smoke in general, right?
I think so, right?
Sometimes I'm like, is that as in your environment? But I think it is less fashionable to smoke.
Yeah, we're like
New Zealand and Australia is following suit, but New Zealand's actually brought in legislation so that you can't buy cigarettes at an age, like so that all the older people can still continue to smoke. But if you're 18 now, you actually can't buy cigarettes. So the idea is to phase them out in terms of by the time those 18-year-olds are 60, they won't be able to buy cigarettes. So I think that's the way things are going.
And I think it was just the opposite for like my parents' age. Like it was very common. It was never considered a health risk when you're 16 years old back in the 50s.
Smoke anywhere. Like when I started waitressing through university, like I used to waitress and then be covered in smoke, right? People used to smoke in the restaurant. Like that was only when I was at university. Now you can't smoke outside the restaurant. You have to go here anyway. You have to go, a few meters away. There's a boundary. You can't smoke anywhere. I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
which is way better.
So relative to the whole idea of aging, sometimes a lot of the things that are influence our age, we're completely out of our control to begin with. Things we were exposed to, things we were as a child, the genetic codes that were passed on from our parents, et cetera. So what do we do about those? Clean out those detox pathways, help your mitochondria rebuild to make sure that we don't have any nutritional deficiencies. And that's enough work right there. But when done, you start to see people actually start to anti-age. And I think I talked a little bit about last week, you can test your telomeres. It's a DNA, it's a gene test that gives you your biological age versus your chronological age. And then if you get to work and you can test it again, find out if you're getting younger or older, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I love that. That's very cool. Awesome. Super, super cool. Well, we're running out of time today. So let's move on to our last question, which is our one action item to take from this episode to move us towards our goal of becoming superhuman?
Real simple, Karen. Let's continue to own it. Take some pride in the ownership of our own health, and don't beat yourself up if it's not awesome, and know that there's going to be ebb and flows. Can't always be improving all the time. So just own it. And the more you own it, the more you have power over and influence over where it's going to go. So that's it. Own it.
Love it. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. We will be back same time, same place next week for another episode of the Health Made Simple show.
Awesome. Appreciate y'all, and keep doing the thing. Keep sharing it out. Keep spreading love. You never know that one person that you do share it out to, how it might influence their lives. And of course, we're going to continue to take deliberate action for your mind, your body, overall wellness. Y'all be awesome.